about Ilyenkov and freedom of the will. And also Andrey's been working on editing all of Ilyenkov's collected works, and he's just completed volume 9. So he's going to tell us about that. And just in case you didn't know, apart from lecturing in the history of Russian philosophy and being professor at Belgorod State National University, he's also UNESCO International Chair of Cultural Historical Psychology of Childhood at the Moscow State University of Childhood and Education, which is very relevant to this particular essay that we're going to be hearing about. There's a lot of people still joining in, coming in very fast. Okay. And also, Kirill will help with the facilitation. In fact, he will do the facilitation and call on people from the chat. So if you could indicate that you want to speak in the discussion in the chat. Is that okay, Kirill?
Yeah, sure.
And there's questions coming. There's a question from Lars in the chat for
yeah. We'll look at questions right at the end. And
so it's over to you, Kirill. Still people coming
over
in.
to me, or?
Yeah, over to you. There's still people coming in.
Oh, well, I mean, do we not want to begin with Andrey's presentation yet? So yeah, I think it would be better if we hear a bit about the paper that has been circulated, and then Andrey, if you want to say anything during your first presentation about the new volume of Ilyenkov's work, you can, or we can have a few questions about the freedom of the will paper, and then you can say something about the collection, and then we'll have questions about the Ilyenkov archive separately. But yeah, I think we can start now. Thank you. Yeah, so over to you, Andrey.
Thank you. Well, the original plan of the collected works was to produce 10 volumes, but it's now clear that one or perhaps two more volumes will be published, and the size of which has been increased. The final volume will contain reviews and Ilyenkov's letters, but the first 5 volumes contain works published during Ilyenkov's lifetime, adding the places from the original manuscripts that censors have removed or editors have spoiled. The 6th volume contains articles from encyclopedias and dictionaries, newspaper articles and interviews. From 7th volume onwards, only archival material and to doctoral theses with preparatory texts were published. The current volume 9, Man and History, is nearing completion. The 10th volume will consist of archival manuscripts on psychology and education. Well, the core of this 9th volume is Ilyenkov's manuscript. You know this paper as Leninist Dialectics and Metaphysics of Positivism. But it is not the real title of this book. This title was created by the editor Lev Naumenko, Ilyenkov's pupil, maybe the best, his pupil. I would like to tell some words about the main idea of this book in original manuscript. According to Ilyenkov, the social order of socialist countries is a triumph of Bogdanovism, that is practical voluntarism and subjectivism. Ilyenkov poses the question as follows, I quote, have the Bogdanovian super engineers of Mars in 70 passing years achieved their goal, educated their inhabitants on Earth, and these even managed to lead some Marxist parties? The question sounds like a diagnosis to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The Institute of Philosophy in the USSR Academy of Sciences is headed by the Marxist Boris Ukraintsov, Ilyenkov's worst enemy. But the editor of the Leninist Dialectics, Naumenko, did his best to remove any hint of anti-Soviet sedition. He turned the book into a philosophical historical narrative with a moral useful for contemporary ideological battles. Criticism of real socialism turned into apologetics. But in the 9th volume of the collected works, the book is published for the first time in the author's version. Well, that's all the presentation, and now I will try to answer the questions in the order they were sent. I'm going to copy the questions themselves into a chat, so I don't have to read them out.
One second. So thank you very much for that first bit, Andrey. So if people are here, they can say their own questions. So I know one question is mine. I can just say what my question is, and then so I think we have an extra question from Lars that he has added in the chat there, but I'll say what my question was, and then I think Wagner also sent a question, so did Karina. So if we're here, I think we can say our own questions, just because it would work better that way. Okay, so I'm interested in how in Vygotsky, a part of freedom is what you wrote about in your article, but an important part of freedom of will is play and creativity. And there's a more basic point he makes, which is that a lot of animals, they're kind of tied to their environment or tied to the visual field, what they see, whereas humans, through play, through creativity, they can deal with things which are not there directly. Now, it seems like in your article, you have a few hints about this overlap between Vygotsky and Ilyenkov around the ideal. So do you think Ilyenkov can be read as saying that creativity is a part of freedom, or is that kind of reading too much into Ilyenkov?
Well, Vygotsky developed a remarkable theory of children's play. He saw the play as the germ of labor, and at the same time as the primary form of free will activity. Here is the quotation from Pedology of School Age. Play and labor can be regarded usually as a psychological antithesis. Play is the realm of instinct, labor is the realm of will. But in human play, already in children's play, the instinctive form is overcome by the game rule. Instinctive activity so turns into cultural, volitional activity. And this is a manifestation of the true dialectical play. Genetically, in the game, the mechanism of labor major. So Vygotsky considers children's play as a polygon, as a future labor, as a embryo of the human labor, is a typical, truly Marxist point of view. Ilyenkov, as far as I know, has spoken about children's play only once in his work on imagination, not translated into English. He links play with artistic creativity, considering them as two ways of cultivating productive imagination. Here is the quotation from Ilyenkov's work. And artistic creativity, the sense of beauty, forms the faculty of imagination in its highest and most complex manifestations, and children's games also forms this faculty, Ilyenkov writes. Well, I would not call this an original view or as something like a theory comparable with Vygotsky's theory of play. Ilyenkov even doesn't address to the key question for Vygotsky about the difference between children's play and animal play. Nor is Ilyenkov interested in ethics. He ignores the problem of ethics and intellect in Spinoza, although this is the central problem of his whole ethics. That is why, in my humble opinion, of course, Ilyenkov couldn't understand Spinoza's solution to the problem of free will. Ilyenkov developed his own Marxist concept of free will, and in my article I tried to show the core ideas of Ilyenkov's concept. Vygotsky, on the other hand, not only understood but brilliantly developed the idea of freedom as the effect in the concept, Vygotsky's own formula. Play is precisely the first step on the path of ascent to freedom. That is on the path of conceptual mastery of effect through rational rule, through the game rule. I have an article on this entitled Lev Vygotsky's Psychology of Freedom, published several years ago. The next question.
Thank you very much. Is the next one Karina's? So if it's if it is Karina's question, then it would be good if Karina could share her one, and then if others do have questions, it would help Andrey if you left them in the chat box so that he's able to read your question as well. So over to you, Karina, if you want to read your question.
Thank you, Kirill. I've just put it into the chat. It's rather long, unfortunately. Basically, I'm kind of trying to look at the question of the free movement of the body that obviously that you have to have a live body in order to have any kind of thought, including the freedom of the will. But there's this observation that if you have no movement of the body, then the psyche inevitably dies out. And then I thought, as a counter argument to that, the example of Henri
For me,
Matisse.
oops, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
No, I thought the sound stopped. Maybe that was just me.
Okay. The artist Henri Matisse was very ill in the last decade of his life, but he was incredibly creative. So you could say that the opposite was true, that he was not moving his body hardly, but his mind was, and his creativity was, his physical creativity in terms of making or directing other people to make things. He directed other people to make his cutouts and his artworks. So it seems to be a strange paradox. And could one argue that the less he was able to move, the more his creativity developed? And that there was a sort of negation process. There was the desire of the will to do these things. And that became stronger and stronger, despite trying to overcome this physical disability. So that was my question.
Well, yes, I agree. We, of course, not only can but must follow this path in order to understand Ilyenkov's solution to the problem of free will. The notion of the ideal forms a watershed between the vulgar materialist interpretation of freedom as the ability to round obstacles, which Ilyenkov mistakenly attributes to Spinoza, and the historical materialist notion of freedom, which Ilyenkov forms through a reinterpretation of the Kantian notion of the purpose of the species, that is of society. This purpose of the species is in fact the social ideal, and this ideal is the basis of the human freedom of free will. We are free when we act as social beings according to the ideal norms of culture, not nature, not instincts. To put it even more succinctly, the more cultured a person is, the freer he or she is. Concerning Matisse and other points, in the absence of physical movement, the psyche begins to deteriorate and gradually dies out. If the body is deprived of movement for a long time, not only the psyche, but also the organics are destroyed over time. As we know, movement is life. This is not only true for animals, but also for humans. Another thing is that firstly, humans have high psychological functions. Ilyenkov would call them ideal, and Vygotsky simply called them higher or cultural functions. These functions work with the help of science, as they are formed and controlled by humans themselves, which opens up possibilities of artificially maintaining psychic life that animals do not have. It is these possibilities, as far as I can judge, that Matisse used. He used his thought moved in a meaningful field. Смысловое поле, there is no correct English translation for this term, Vygotsky's term, смысловое поле. Meaningful field is
Field of meanings, yeah.
Oh, field of meanings. According to Vygotsky, the highest psychological functions are carried out in this special field. For ordinary people, the main tool is speech. Artists and musicians have other tools that are better developed in them than speech concerning Matisse personally. These tools allow them to work intensively in the field of meanings, even where they have minimal opportunities to move in the physical space. These are two different modes of work of the psyche, the highest and the lowest. That is my answer to Karina's question.
Thank you very much. That's great. And we'll move over to Wagner next, I think. Yeah.
The next part of Karina's
sorry. Okay.
questions, does this relate to Vygotsky's concept of higher mental development, influencing the law, the physical process of cutting paper? It's difficult question for me to answer. I think a special psychological study is needed here. And I would suggest that there is no direct determination, physical and mental, between physical and mental aspects. But I can't prove it at the moment. But in general, for Vygotsky, the higher culture doesn't simply influence the lower physical processes. It is better not to speak of an influence or a determination, but of a sublation, снятие, Aufhebung in German, of the lower into the higher. This sublation occurs in the growth of a child or garden plants. Vygotsky constantly uses the metaphor of a garden to describe the development of a child. So this is not simply a parallel. This is a genetic родство.
Sorry, I didn't hear which word are you?
Родство, kinship, of course. Genetic kinship. And Wagner's questions now. 3 questions. He put it.
I can read them, and they are in the chat also.
Yes, please. Yeah.
The first one, you can be as broad or as synthetic as you want, because it's a very broad question. But I am interested, since seems to me that you have a good reading of these authors. What you think are the more critical convergences and divergences between Vygotsky, Rubinstein, and Ilyenkov? The other one is a question that if you don't feel comfortable to answer, that is okay. But in 2021, you published a paper that was still restricted in the Vygotsky's Family's Archive. I want to know if there is anything relevant there besides that paper of Vygotsky criticizing Luria's paper on psychoanalysis. And the third one is what do you think we can do to make Marxist-Leninist science and philosophy more politically and academically relevant today? Thank you.
Well, to answer the first question in even the most general terms would require an article, at least. But the case of Rubinstein is simpler. I have already written about that in some of my articles, and the logic of Rubinstein's thinking is in its basic features Kantian dualistic logic. It is the logic of refraction, to use Rubinstein's own term, a reflection of the cultural in the natural, and not the logic of sublation of the natural into the cultural, with the cultural, as in Vygotsky. As for Vygotsky and Ilyenkov, in my article on free will, I have only tried to show important points of their agreement and disagreement. I also published an article on polytechnic education in Vygotsky and Ilyenkov, which compares their positions on this issue of educating the free, perfect communist person, polytechnically educated person. They propose two different ways to achieve this communist goal. And it is a very interesting and important issue to compare their views on this problem. I must honestly say that Ilyenkov is not Vygotsky's follower on the ground of psychology and pedagogy, though Ilyenkov respected Vygotsky a lot, but he rather continues Leontiev's line. I mean Alexei Leontiev, and I have the impression that Ilyenkov has not understood much of the late Vygotsky's teaching on consciousness and on freedom as effect in the concept. Leontiev and Ilyenkov addressed to the early Vygotsky's writings much more known in the West than the later Vygotsky's manuscripts and notebooks, his height psychology, his theory of consciousness of meaningful field, etc. Concerning the second question, the real revolution in Vygotsky studies was the publication of his notebooks 8 years ago. For me personally, this was a new discovery or a discovery of Vygotsky, of his height psychology, which he had only just begun to develop. Such big discoveries, it seems to me, will never happen again. And Vygotsky's home archive, there are several transcripts of lectures and early writings that might shed some new light on his theory, perhaps 15 or 20 small texts. 9 of Vygotsky's unpublished lectures are in the St. Petersburg archives. A few more are in the archives of Moscow and the Moscow region, and nobody made attempts to publish all these Vygotsky's works. They are very intriguing, maybe, and I published several of them during the last 5 years. And what do we make Marxist-Leninist science and philosophy, particularly and politically and academically relevant today? Well, I don't think political engagement is good for scientific theories. In my view, political engagement did serious damage to Marx's own work, not to mention Marxist thought in the 20th century. Academic relevance is a different matter, but the thing is that the academic environment in the West and in Russia is very different. It is difficult for me to give prescriptions for the promotion of Marxism in the West. I can only give what might be called a global advice. In Marxism, it is necessary to separate science from ideology, just as we separate Newton's physics from his theology and alchemical theory of the vegetation of metals and so on. Until this task is accomplished, Marx's scientific discoveries, including the science of logic, will suffocate under the dead weight of his political ideological doctrine. Das Kapital mentions a French proverb, the dead size the living. This is all the more true of Marxism today, as it was in Marx's own time. So that is all my answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there were any other questions sent in, but yeah, thank you for preparing. But we've got a few questions in the chat still. So we will come to the people in the chat. If you have another question that we've not had time for, please do also type it so that Andrey is able to read it as well as hearing it, okay? So there are a few people in the queue. So first it'll be Lars, the question about Brentano's concept of intentionality. Then Isabel wants to ask about Pavlov. And then, yeah, if you do have a question yourself, please also type it so Andrey is able to read it. So Lars, do you want to give your question? And I appreciate that Andrey may not have as much to say because these questions have not been sent in beforehand. So a short answer is fine.
Okay, it's kind of a special question, you know, about the concept of will, which on page 93 in your paper states that will is the psychological function through which the process of cultural development is realized. And Vygotsky treats the will as a form of implementation and regulation of all functions and behavior as a whole. So my question then is how and if is the concept of will related to intentionality, the process by which meaning grows and operates? If you can say something about that, I'm grateful.
Vygotsky didn't use the term intentionality in such sense, in such meaning, but he was very interested by the process by which meaning grows and operates. This was the central point of his divergence with Alexei Leontiev, who Leontiev didn't want to follow Vygotsky into the investigation of this process of growing meanings into the consciousness. And this is the topic of the last book, posthumous book of Vygotsky, Thinking and Speech. But concerning the concept of will, how it is connected with the process of acquiring and ingrowing of meanings into the consciousness, can't answer this question right now without special investigation in Vygotsky's works.
Well, thank you very much. To my knowledge, where Vygotsky talks about Brentano, who created the concept of intentionality, he's quite critical because Brentano fixes an object in not a very dialectical way, according to him, and he talks about, I think he talks about Brentano, then Freud at one point, but yeah, he's not very keen. So Isabel has a question about Pavlov. Yeah, so if you're able to ask that,
Yeah.
that would be great, Isabel.
So it concerns the fact that Pavlov's experiments, they deal with animal minds in particular, not necessarily human minds, but dogs. And I was thinking whether there's something about the notion of free will as it is tied to the freedom of movement that is also maybe related to peculiarly human kind of definition of thinking, or definition of human thinking that is then also related to the personality as kind of social, the ensemble of social relations, and whether this is relevant that this concerns in Ilyenkov the human being and not plants, animals, and other beings. And in this paper, it's kind of implicit that it's relevant for his notion of subject, also Vygotsky's notion of subject, and that humans are not objects, but subjects. And I was just curious whether this is relevant to your argument and your definition of the concept of the free will.
Vygotsky told in one of his manuscripts, unpublished, that there are two ways of constructing physiology. From above, psychological physiology, as he called this science, or as Pavlov, in a Pavlovian way, from below, and without understanding the psychological nature of animals' activity. He preferred the experiments of Köhler, Wolfgang Köhler, with apes on the Tenerife island. But he commented many times on these experiments. He was especially interested in the question, what is the difference between the tool, between the stick that monkey uses and human tools, even in children, in early children. What is the difference? And his solution was that human tools have meaning. They are meaningful. And the animal tools are lacked of meanings. So Pavlov's experiments didn't influence Vygotsky very much. The second part of the question, how is the notion of free will tied to Ilyenkov's understanding of the human personality? The personality is, according to Marx's formula, is the ensemble of social relations, and free will is the ability to act according to the social ideal. to the social norms of behavior. For me, as far as I can judge, the free will is the attribute of human personality, the way of forming the human personality and the manifestation of its life activity. That is all.
Thank you. We'll go to Natalia and then Ralph. So Ralph has a question about rebelling against social norms. Yeah, so if you could share yours now, Natalia, that would be good.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Andrey. It is a big pleasure to read it because I read already many of your books I have here. So your Spinoza, Pro and Contra, and Polovtsova. And it is just I didn't have enough time now. It was very quickly, so I will write you questions later. But I just want to a small comment about this connection relation from immobility and unfreedom of movement and illusion of free will, because I was researching about critics of central perspective in the Soviet modernity, and central perspective was associated already in this time with the Kantian subject, an idealistic subject of free will, illusion of free will, and so illusion of free will was also criticized in connection or relation to immobility, this immobile eye, abstract eye of central perspective is the eye of not embodied subject who cannot move, who cannot experience the world and whole complexity of connections and relations. And it is really ironical thing here that actually Ilyenkov made this equality between immobility of Pavlov's dog and illusion of free will, Kantian and illusion of free will. This is in this large discourse about critique of central perspective, immobility of I, and abstract Kantian subject, and illusion of free, idealist illusion of free will. It is all in this figure of Pavlov's dog. It is very funny, I think, and interesting. And for example, I would like to ask you maybe about Bechterev. I was also researching a lot about Bechterev, and Bechterev was also criticizing Pavlov for all these topics. And for example, in this book, I have sometimes also some books from this time, Psychologia, Reflexologia, Marxism. He also writes that his system is more Spinozian, and research about behavior of human beings, reflexological behavior of human beings is based on social activities and connectedness and so on. So all things which are not relevant for Pavlov's dog. And this is some kind of alternative project in this time about physiological and reflexological research, materialist-based research, so really materialist-based, not like Pavlov, who was a Russian Orthodox believed man who was actually dealing with animals like mechanisms. And maybe you could say something if you know about the relation to some other kind of physiological researches in this time. And yes, maybe other questions I will write to later.
Thank you. So there's a question there about Bechterev as another possible Spinozist to think about. Any opinions there, Andrey?
I don't think that Bechterev is a Spinozist, though I am not at all a Bechterev expert. But I'd like to compare the method of analyzing psychic phenomena in Ilyenkov and in Bechter. Bechter explains and Bechter speaks about internal determination of human behavior with complexes of reflex, сочетательные рефлексы, я не знаю, как это.
Yes. Associated reflexes.
Associated reflexes. This is this attempt to explain human behavior from inside, from physiological mechanism, is unacceptable, totally unacceptable for Ilyenkov, because for Bechter, the man is an ensemble of reflexes, and for Ilyenkov, man is an ensemble of social relations, which may be expressed also in reflexes, but mostly, that is most important, the personality is expressed in objects, in products of human labor, all that around us, the ideal reality, the culture. The culture is the explanation principle in Ilyenkov. Bechter also considers culture, as far as I know from your explanation. Bechter didn't ignore a culture, but it is not enough. The culture is the essence, is the living essence of all human personalities. That I think this Marxist point was totally aligned to Bechter.
I would just small question. So Marx, the transformation or translation of Spinoza to Marx, it is problematic already because the Spinoza is not a dialectical philosopher, and Marx's notion of labor is a dialectical one. It is some kind of result of alienation from nature, going into this subject-object relationship with nature, understanding of nature as a kind of externality. It is a dialectical concept of nature and labor, and by Spinoza it is not. How it is possible then? How it is made by Ilyenkov, for example?
Yes, of course, he didn't modernize Spinoza to such extent that to ascribe Spinoza the concept of labor or the concept of man as a social ensemble. But Spinoza also never explained mind through bodily reactions, through bodily affects, etc. Body doesn't affect mind, according to Spinoza, and according to Bechter, body affects mind every time and constantly.
Thank you. So, yeah, Ralph has a question about Ilyenkov's attitude towards social norms. So unmute, Ralph. You can ask it yourself verbally.
I don't know if you wanted me to speak or not. It's kind of difficult to type.
Sure.
You know, I only have a vague notion, at least from your article, as to Ilyenkov's conception of freedom of the will as expressing overall social norms. To me, that's very too vague and abstract and doesn't necessarily account to the actual reaction of individuals to social norms, whether they're big political issues or issues of basic human relations. I mentioned the example of arranged marriages in many traditional societies, and the fact that even without necessarily some overall political perspective, there's constant rebellion against these restrictions and other types of restrictions on personal relationships. And that is happening all over the world today, especially with the modernization or changes in traditional societies. So I don't really see how the nature of freedom or the expansion of freedom is accounted for, at least in what has been presented in this article. To me, it's just a vacuous generalization. So I'd like some clarification of that.
Okay, so you're talking about how we can use our free will to go against social norms, not just that it expresses social norms.
Yes, I mean, what does Ilyenkov have to say about that? To me, it's just too vague. I don't know what Maidansky has to say either, but the whole thing that I get from this, of Ilyenkov's views, for me is just too nebulous, at least from reading this one article. I don't really get it.
Thank you.
Well, the rebellion against social norms is performed is performed due to another social norms, not due to animal instincts or some natural motives. Social norms are very многообразны.
Diverse, yeah, multi-formed.
For the sake of another.
Yes, and social norms confront with each other, and the rebellion against social norms is a norm itself in our society, but there is no any rebellion which would not be a social normative act.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a question. Yeah, if we have questions about the archive, then that would be great. So actually, Wagner did have a question about the archive, and I guess that the question is just whether you see Lenin and the metaphysics of positivism as a central and important text. Is it core to Ilyenkov's work? Does it have important ideas, or do you see it as a different type of text? So I think that was the core to Wagner's earlier question.
As far as I can understand this question, Ilyenkov had a purpose when he wrote his Leninist Dialectics. He fought against contemporary Marxism. He wanted to show that Marxism not our past. Marxism is our contemporary reality, and his fight against Ukrainцев takes a lot of many pages of this work, including pamphlet, very zloy, sarcastic pamphlet against Ukrainцев. He called him безумцев, mad. Madman.
Yeah.
And he hates Ukrainцев, and all his book is пропитана this hatred, with his hatred. And Naumenko
Penetrated.
penetrated with this feeling, strong feeling to Marxism. but Naumenka deleted any trace of these polemics and any quotations from Ukrainцев, names Hintika. Ilyenkov criticized Hintika's article on perception in Вопросы Philosophy journal.
Interesting.
All this was deleted, and the chapter on Marxian socialism from Bogdanov's novel The Red Star was also deleted totally, the whole chapter.
Thank you.
Just quickly related to this, on the collected works of Ilyenkov, this text will be fully presented, or we just lost these sections that were taken out of the original paper?
I'm not sure that the whole volume will be accessible for the English audience, and who can translate the massive volume, about 500 pages, into English. I don't know, hardly.
What I mean is that on the collected works in Russian, it will be the non-redated text that will be published, or was published. I don't know. I am not following the collected works.
Very bad, very phone.
So Wagner is asking if the Russian version will be the full book, or if there are things we've now lost because of the censoring. So will volume 9 be everything that Ilyenkov intended?
It is about, the whole book is about 150 or 60 pages. It is not a big book. It was unfinished. And another very important articles in this, including, but there are editions, appendix to the Leninist Dialectics and pamphlets on Ukrainцев. Another article, Lenin will live forever, and some very interesting anti-Soviet pieces from his Chernaviki drafts. To the Leninist Dialectics, there are dozens of pages, drafts, and all the interesting material concerning Leninist Dialectics will be published in the 9th volume. But another very interesting articles are deal with Ilyenkov's polemic with Adam Schaff, Polish Marxist, revisionist, and Ilyenkov took part in the battle, in the polemics discussion of Adam Schaff's book, Marxism as the Human Individual. Ilyenkov wrote 2 papers, which only one of them was published in the book Philosophy and Culture of 1991. Another piece will be published already in April in the journal Method, wholly devoted to Ilyenkov's legacy and contained two. Contains two Ilyenkov's unpublished works, including a thesis on alienation and review of Adam Schaff's book.
Great, thank you. Sasha, did you want to ask your question? If there's anything left to ask.
Yeah. Sorry, I cannot use my video. Oh, I just wanted to know if Andrey will also publish the notes you once told me about. Ilyenkov had made some notes of more political nature before me, and especially some anti-state statements. I was wondering if they will be published, so where, and yeah, what kind of notes they are.
Right, so are there other notes or texts where Ilyenkov is openly political and specifically against the state? Have those been published in Russian? Will they be published?
Another piece of work from the 9th volume is Ilyenkov's letters to Yuri Zhdanov. The only letters where Ilyenkov, the only text where Ilyenkov critically discusses the economic policy of Soviet state, and he advocates market. He demands to give a market as an autonomous life with all its minuses, as he expressed it. With all his minuses, such as exploitation of man by man, such as crises, etc. All capitalistic problems. Ilyenkov tells us that there is no pluses without minuses. If you want to develop economy, market is the only possible solution.
Thank you. And Olga has a question about Adam Schaff.
Yes.
Go ahead, Olga.
Andrey said earlier that, yes. No.
Ilyenkov's works on Adam Schaff were not published, so they can't. They was not followed by any repressions. Ilyenkov was a revisionist worse than Schaff in the eyes of Soviet authorities. Schaff wanted to morally improve the state bureaucracy, but Ilyenkov wanted to change the state with the self-organization of people, of the individuals. This was criminal.
So both Adam Schaff and Ilyenkov are often called humanists. So the idea of Marxist humanists, I wonder, what is it that he criticizes Adam Schaff about? And for you, reading these political notes, would you say it's accurate to identify their politics as Marxist humanism?
Schaff was influenced by Fromm, and his book is a complex of ideas from and from Erich Fromm, yes, and from Heidegger and from many bourgeois philosophers. But the main idea of Schaff is that Marx was wrong when he was naive, as Schaff expressed it, when he wanted to replace the state or to the Marxist humanism is an utopia for Schaff, and Ilyenkov defends Marx's ideas, confronting with Schaff on this point.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for a few more, and then we will say thank you and goodbye. Is anyone who has not asked a question yet, would anyone like to ask a question, either about freedom of the will or about the collected works that Andrey is working on? We do have some questions in the chat, but particularly if you haven't spoken yet, if you have a question, then that would be great. Okay, then let's see. Okay, I think that question has been answered. Right, so Karina's asking if it was actually possible for Ilyenkov to read a lot of what was Vygotsky's work.
When I read Ilyenkov, I can't find the traces of Vygotsky's influence. If not to take Leontiev's influence, Vygotsky influenced Ilyenkov via through the explanations of Leontiev in Leontiev's version.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. Okay. Last chance if anyone else does have a question, including people who have spoken before, then we'll have one more question. Okay.
I did have a question. But just going back to the if you like to call it dialectic between the physical and the mental that we were discussing earlier, the higher and the lower mental functions, maybe. Isn't this this is where the ideal comes in, surely, where in the sense that it's the play and creativity and freedom are must be mediated through objects which are humanly created through labor, so that the physical object, or which includes mentally created objects such as writing or works of art, or I mean particularly writing, which seems to be very there's not much of an object to get hold of, but these are all the result of physical mental activity by human beings creating ideal objects, and it's through these that freedom is exercised. Is that correct?
Okay, so the question is about connecting Vygotsky's idea of mediation and Ilyenkov's idea of the ideal. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I think as we speak speak of the concept of ideal. In Ilyenkov, it is very close to what Vygotsky called the higher psychological functions. And there is even a term in Vygotsky, in the later Vygotsky uses the term ideal form. The ideal form is the exemplar, the образец.
I mean, yeah, that just means ideal again. Yeah, it's like the final version. It's the
ideal form is the example of acting, the example of behavior that is demonstrated by adults and children take this ideal form from the social environment, and it is very close to Ilyenkov's concept of the ideal.
Thank you. That's really fascinating to find out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Natalia's back.
Just a small question to this topic to understand better, because the ideal, it relates to attribute cogitatio, or it is something in between. It is not extension, it is not extensio, it is cogitatio, but it is still not necessarily intellectual cogitatio, because it is connected to psychology, psychological psychological processes. Can you maybe just clear a bit for?
As if we take Spinoza's
Yes.
conception, ideas are not the subject matter of psychology. Affects.
Yes.
Affects, that is psychological reality, but not ideas. Ideas are the modus of intellect, the modus of the attribute of thought.
But ideal by Ilyenkov, it is psychological.
No, Ilyenkov's ideal, it's a cultural, a matter of cultural behavior, cultural activity, to use a better term. What Spinoza had no such notion close to Ilyenkov's ideal.
So Ilyenkov's ideal doesn't relate to cogitatio.
Directly, doesn't directly relate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for all of your answers, Andrey. Yeah, I think that was a really wide-ranging and interesting and deep discussion. And thank you to everyone who's asked a question. I'll pass back over to Karina, and then we'll close.
Thanks again to you, Andrey. It's been really, really wonderful to hear about all this work you've done on the editing and bringing us up to date on these connections between Ilyenkov and Vygotsky. Just to say to everyone here, our next session will be on the 22nd of May, and we've got Alex Levant and Alan Diaz talking about AI, and both of them are written quite a lot about it. Alan Diaz wrote a wonderful essay in Marxism in Sciences, which you can read, and Alex Levant is translated Ilyenkov's Dialectics of the Ideal, and has written quite a lot about this question. So we hope that you can all come to that. And that's it, really. And thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.